David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The Trump-Russia scandal continues to grow as disgraced, disgusting, degrading, depraved, and delusional former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has been indicted and has pleaded guilty, making him the fourth person charged as part of Robert Mueller's investigation. The second to have pleaded guilty already, along with George Papadopoulos. And of course, we also had the indictments of Paul Manafort and his business partner, Rick Gates, some weeks ago. Both of them pleaded not guilty. But let's talk about Michael Flynn today and the implications. Flynn has been charged with and pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about conversations with the Russian ambassador Sergei Kislyak last December. And this is the charge. This is the key thing, okay? This is the charge that Flynn agreed to plead guilty to as part of a plea agreement, right? Which includes some degree of as yet unknown cooperation between Michael Flynn and prosecutor Robert Mueller. Flynn can now tell Mueller whatever he knows. And that's really the biggest part of this. And the future of this investigation may hinge on what Flynn knows and what Flynn tells Robert Mueller. Now, Trump's reaction has been hilarious, unhinged, outrageous panic, really almost unintelligible panic, taking to Twitter throughout the entire weekend, starting with, "I had to fire General Flynn because he lied to the vice president and the FBI. He has pled guilty to those lies. It is a shame because his actions during the transition were lawful. There was nothing to hide." Also, the president of the United States tweeting, "So General Flynn lies to the FBI and his life is destroyed, while crooked Hillary Clinton on that now famous FBI holiday interrogation with no swearing in and no recording lies many times. And nothing happens to her? Rigged system or just a double standard?" Committed right-wing Trumpist reaction to the charges against Michael Flynn. Oh, these charges are so small that they're almost meaningless and they have nothing to do with Donald Trump whatsoever. Well, there's kind of two ways to look at that talking point, right? That these are just minor charges against Michael Flynn. Number one is the way that some Trumpists want you to look at it, which is these charges are really small. They're going nowhere, and it means absolutely nothing about the presidency of Donald Trump. I tend not to agree with that. The idea that Flynn was only charged with this, and thus it's not a big deal, is wrong. Flynn was only charged with this one count because he is cooperating, and he's being charged early. Remember, this is only the fourth indictment, and it's been going on. I think our first indictment was like 7-8 weeks ago. He's being charged early because Robert Mueller thinks that he can go way higher than Flynn. He can use Flynn to go up and get indictments against even bigger players. Do not be tricked. A national security advisor being charged is a big deal, no matter what the charges are. Don't fall for the right-wing lie that it's only a minor charge. We're only 10 months into this administration, and we have 4 indictments, including someone who worked at the White House. The idea, Pat, that, oh, nothing to see here because the charges against multiple Trump officials and campaign staffers are not big charges, that is laughable.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just disagree with one minor point that you said there, which is that you can go way higher than Flynn. How much higher than Flynn can you go? Maybe Jared Kushner, maybe President Trump. That's about it. Flynn was the national security advisor after all.
But you can go higher. That's the key. And I think that that's the really it's a question for Robert Mueller, right? And that is an interesting thing that Pat is pointing out, which is national security advisor works at the White House, and this particular NSA worked at the White House while Donald Trump was president. The fact that it's coming so early tells us so much about how high it may go.
But of course, Flynn was a former Obama administration official, right?
Oh, yeah. He was. Why did Obama agree to hire Flynn in the first place? And that's actually, I don't know if I would call it an irony. I don't know what I would call it. But President Obama told Trump, don't hire Flynn. Don't hire Flynn. And we don't know if it's because Trump doesn't respect Obama's opinion or because he wanted to do the exact opposite of anything that President Obama said. Trump could have at least avoided part of this he had just listened to President Obama. And that is very, very interesting. This also, by the way, sheds a ton of light onto Trump's multiple repeated attempts to shut this thing down, asking Comey to shut it down, asking Republicans to try to shut it down. We'll get to that later in the show. Even though Trump keeps telling us he's not worried, he's not acting like someone who isn't worried. And I jokingly tweeted something like, Mike Flynn can't place the guy, must have been a nobody, don't remember who that was. Donald Trump has a new lawyer dealing with the Russia probe, and the guy's name is, and this is for real, Ty Cobb. Ty Cobb is the name of the new lawyer that's representing Donald Trump with regard to this investigation. He actually said, listen, Michael Flynn served briefly in the administration, and after all, it's only one count that he pleaded guilty to. Some left-wingers, by the way, are also playing this down. I don't even have time for them, Pat, at this point. I can't deal with the left-wingers who still say there's no Russia story.
Didn't Trump specifically ask James Comey in the Oval Office to let the Michael Flynn investigation go?
Yeah, because Flynn was a good guy or something along those lines. Yeah, this is not the behavior of someone who thinks this is going to lead to nothing. And the highlights are 4 indictments in 8 weeks, Papadopoulos in early October, Manafort and Gates October 30th, Watergate took years, the National Security Advisor is cooperating, and Trump is scared. That is the top line, and we're going to continue following it. Senate Republicans passed their version of the tax cut bill, which is actually really a tax hike bill. Yes, it would give tons of money to the rich and to corporations, but it would increase taxes in the long run for more than half of all Americans, as I told you last week. It would increase taxes in the long run for millions of seniors, as I told you last week. Middle-class families earning under $75,000 a year would see tax increases over the long term. Graduate students would get absolutely crushed, and this would increase the debt hugely. But we have Republicans voting in favor of it. And the version of the bill that senators voted on was released just a few hours before it was voted on. As usual, not enough time to actually read it before voting. Completely pathetic. And the entire thing has not yet become the law. Some people have emailed me saying now that this bill is the law. House Republicans voted to pass one version. Senate Republicans voted to pass a different version. And now, and maybe as early as this week, the conference committee will start. And what they will try to do is merge the two bills into one, and ideally into one version that both the House and Senate can agree on. But something really weird happened. This is bizarre. After the Senate passed a version of the bill, Trump said at some fundraisers over the weekend that he would consider a higher corporate tax rate than the one that was passed in the Senate bill, which is weird. I'm not saying I disagree with that, but Trump has been talking about lowering the corporate tax rate, which would not be good for hiring anyway, by the way. CEOs of big corporations have said, no, we're not going to hire more if you lower our tax rate. Trump has been campaigning on lowering that, and now he's saying he might actually want a higher corporate tax rate than the one that was passed by Republicans in the Senate. I don't even want to concern myself with that. That's just Trump being Trump. This is not a good bill for most people. That is what I'm concerned with, period. If voters understood things, then we would all be able to sit back and say, don't worry. If Republicans get this thing passed, they'll get crushed in November in the midterms and in 2020 as well. But the problem is that too many people are just clueless about the details of the bill. They'll hear Trump promised a tax bill and Republicans delivered a tax bill. They did it with no regard for what it is, even though this bill, if it passes, if it becomes the law, would be the exact opposite of the populist paradise that Donald Trump ran on. There's this idea that is out there as well for all of you who believe that every senator here is ultimately going to vote to pass the conference version. I mentioned this last week. There's this idea that there are some more moderate Senate Republicans. Lisa Murkowski from Alaska is one of the ones whose name is being thrown about, who voted for the Senate version for now in order to be able to say, hey, I was in favor of tax reform, but will ultimately vote against the conference version so that they can also say, hey, you know what? I support tax reform, but in the end, what the House and Senate committees agreed upon would not have been good. That's interesting political posturing and theater that is sort of an aside to what's going on. And I'm curious whether we'll see that.
And if she goes along with that, then you just need one more Senate Republican, right? Maybe Susan Collins,
who would fail
Jeff Flake.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not, I mean, I don't know if we could say it's likely or unlikely, but there are moderately reasonable Republicans in the Senate who I could see not going along with whatever totally abortive conference version comes out of that. I do hope that whether this passes or not, Democrats will do everything that they can do to crush Republicans with this in the midterms. Make it clear that Republicans, if they pass this bill, are taking hundreds of billions of dollars away from families and giving it to the rich and to corporations, period. And the only path forward, the only solution is to vote them out. And that applies to a lot of issues. We talked about net neutrality last week with attorney Andrew Torres, and we basically have to realize we can't stop the repeal of net neutrality. We're beyond signing petitions. We're beyond calling members of Congress, although I still encourage you to do it. Roy Moore campaign, you just got to vote, right? You've got to vote for the other guy. These tax cut proposals, which are actually tax hikes for more than half of Americans in the long run, at a certain point, the calls and the petitions aren't going to do it. You've got to vote these people out.
Yeah, and I mean, who's calling for any of this? No one wants net neutrality to be repealed.
Yeah.
I mean, this tax bill, usually you pass tax reform when, the economy is in shambles, right? You think back to Reagan, and you'd think it would maybe stimulate the economy, or
if you believe in those economics, right?
Right. Yeah, and George
can...
W. Bush, there was a surplus, and maybe
Yes.
you could figure you can put that money back to the people's hands, right? There's no reason for this. They're just getting away with murder.
It's funny because Trump claims that the economy is just doing so incredibly well. Well, if the economy is doing so well and you've not yet changed anything about how the economy works, and taxes are a big thing, the health insurance is a big thing. Right now, taxes and health insurance, which are two of the major economic components in the American economy, they're what President Obama left you. So if indeed the economy is doing so well with the exact parameters that President Obama left you, why would you be trying to make such major changes to some of the fundamental aspects of the economy? It's the vile, bottom-feeding stuff. And speaking of which, Orrin Hatch, Senator Orrin Hatch from Utah, an example of this, the morally corrupt deviance from common decency. Orrin Hatch, during the Senate debate about this bill, the topic of CHIP came up, Children's Health Insurance Plan. That costs about $14 billion a year. And during the Senate debate about this tax cut bill, Orrin Hatch said, we're going to do CHIP. There's no question about it in my mind, and it's got to be done the right way. But the reason CHIP's having trouble is because we don't have money anymore. And to just add more and more spending, and you can look at the rest of the bill for the more and more spending, I have a rough time wanting to spend billions and billions and trillions of dollars to help people who won't help themselves, won't lift a finger, and expect the federal government to do everything. How do we not have $14 billion for children's health insurance, but we can add $1 trillion to the debt to give tax cuts to the rich so they can bank more cash? And what is Orrin Hatch talking about? People who won't help themselves? We're talking about children here, kids. What is it that the kids aren't doing to help themselves? They don't have full-time jobs? What on earth is he talking about? This is the mindset that actually explains the bill. The poor, kids, minorities, whoever, these are people who just want handouts, while big corporations and rich people who have earned everything that they have and more need to have their taxes cut. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at DPacman. The show is on Twitter at David Pakman Show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Kevin Brewer. Kevin, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. This is viewer and listener supported media. We've grown to 5 shows a week, really because of your support. So if the program is valuable to you, I do ask for your support. You can sign up for membership at davidpakman.com/membership. You can also use the Patreon platform. What that means is you go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, and you can just make a pledge of as little as $1 a month. We do have some of the same membership benefits on Patreon at the $5 and $10 levels. And lastly, if you're in the cryptocurrency space, you can contribute via cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin at davidpakman.com/cryptocurrency. All right, we are in December now, which means it's almost 2018, which means you need a calendar for your wall for 2018. And 2018 David Pakman Show calendars are here. Our goal this year is to send out 250 or more David Pakman Show calendars. In the first few days, we got 30 or more orders for them so far. So we are in really good shape. I do want to tell you a little more about the calendar. The calendars are, it's 100% David Pakman Show audience created art. So 3 of our viewers and listeners created the David Pakman Show calendar art. It's a combination of comic strips, cartoon type work, and you see that there's one storyline where I grow a huge beard, and it's a really, really funny thing that we're showing our TV audience right now. But we're not going to show you every comic strip because that would be, what would the point be of doing that? We've got to leave something to the imagination. And then also some other great artwork from our audience. And you can get the calendar for free if you want it with a new yearly membership. You can find out about that at davidpakman.com/calendar18. So with a new yearly membership, we will ship you a calendar autographed at no cost whatsoever. You can also go to davidpakman.com/calendar18 and click through to get just the calendar. And you have the option of getting it autographed or not. And either way, these make really, really great gifts. It's a great conversation starter to put, particularly if you work in a conservative office. I think that this is a great thing to put on the wall. I know, Pat, you have, how many dozens of these things are you putting up all in your car at this point? You're just plastering.
Oh, I have to get new memberships now. I already have like 60, 70,000.
Yeah, I know. It's a whole complex thing. You should see what's going on with Pat's credit card churning game. He's flying around the world for free because of the number of calendars and memberships he's buying. Also, Pat, I do want to mention, if you'll allow me, that members and patrons get a discount off of the calendar. So if you want to get the calendar discount, you can just become a patron for $1 a month, right? You put in $1 a month on Patreon, and then you'll find out about the huge calendar discount code. So listen, the bottom line, my message is there is no shortage of different ways that you can get this calendar, either for free, discounted, autographed, not autographed. And it's a really good way to support our show for the end of the year. And it's actually something you'll use all year long, or that someone you gift it to will use, instead of one of those weird, nobody needs a 5th pizza cutter.
It's probably more useful than a David Pakman Show colander.
We've actually, the colanders are only useful if you're part of the Church of the Flying Spaghetti Monster, and you want to have your license picture taken with it on. But otherwise, don't go with the colander, go with the calendar, the David Pakman Show calendar. davidpakman.com/calendar18. These things are flying out of here, just off camera. It's just stacked to the wall, to the ceiling of calendars. Pat can barely get in the office because of how many calendars we have in here. Okay, I told you earlier in the show, Donald Trump is off the rails after the indictment of disgraced, disgusting, depraved, and delusional former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Trump, in a series of very strange tweets, attacked his own FBI, saying that the reputation of the FBI is in tatters, and that's with a capital T. Tatters is a proper noun in the world of Trump. And of course, the pattern, I'm going to show you and read to you some of these tweets. The pattern is that they're all unintelligible, and that they mostly seem to be just a repetition on a 30-minute delay of what's happening on Fox News, specifically and most commonly what's happening on Fox and Friends. The first tweet from Donald Trump about this: tainted, no, very dishonest, FBI agent's role in Clinton probe under review. Now, there's just a litany of parentheses and quotation marks in these tweets, and there's no way that I can really translate that into how I read it. So you'll have to see it to understand it. Tainted, no, very dishonest, FBI, quote, agent's role in Clinton probe under review, end quote. Led Clinton email probe, period, email capitalized, I'm not sure why. At Fox and Friends, Clinton money going to wife of another FBI agent in charge. Okay, Trump staying on Twitter over the weekend. After years of Comey with the phony and dishonest Clinton investigation and more, comma, running the FBI, its reputation is in tatters, tatters capitalized, worst in history, history also capitalized. But fear not, we will bring it back to greatness. And this is an attack on his own FBI, right? I mean, the guy running the FBI now, Chris Wray, that's his name, right, Pat? That's someone Trump picked to run the FBI. Are you telling us, Donnie, that the lowest point in history of the FBI is when the guy you picked is running it? Not exactly a ringing endorsement of his own ability to appoint people. And then another tweet from Donald Trump: report, all caps and quoted, anti-Trump FBI agent led Clinton email probe. Now it all starts to make sense. And what is fascinating is that Fox and Friends had that exact quote up on screen at 8:07 a.m. Eastern time, right? Report, anti-Trump FBI agent led email probe. That's on Fox and Friends at 8:07. 29 minutes later at 8:36 a.m., Trump tweets it. Trump's basically following Fox and Friends. The Trump mindset is directly controlled by Fox and Friends. If you are Fox and Friends, do you realize the amount of power that you wield right now? Because the president seems to mostly be following your reports.
Yeah, it could be the most powerful TV show in the whole country, I would
say
venture
so.
to say.
In some incredibly bizarre way, I think it is. And then this morning, Trump also continuing to tweet about Fox and Friends. A must-watch legal scholar capitalized as well, Alan Dershowitz, was just on Fox and Friends talking of what is going on with respect to the greatest witch hunt capitalized, in U.S. political history. Enjoy. It is the Fox and Friends presidency. And if we look back at the last 6 to 9 months, if Trump is out there proactively trying to discredit his own FBI in this way, my question is, what's the FBI about to release? Because the growing hysteria from Trump about the FBI, to me, signals the FBI is getting close to something big, because the timing of it, when Trump starts attacking some institution, it's sometimes right after, but sometimes it's right before there's some kind of major release or revelation.
Yeah, and I really think that Trump could be the most anti-law enforcement president we've ever seen. Yeah. I mean, whether it's going after his own Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, or undermining the intelligence agencies when they agree that, yes, Russia did try to infiltrate the election.
Indeed.
Now at the FBI and the probe into him, it's craziness.
But when Republicans do it, it's okay. It's when the left does it that they don't respect our institutions, the pillars that our democracy is built on. And it's also all projection, right? The FBI's reputation isn't really in tatters, but Trump as the president of the United States has led to the reputation of the U.S. being in actual tatters around the world. It's all projection. And the real tragedy, as is often the case, is that the president of the United States is publicly denigrating institutions of the United States, federal institutions, in other cases, cultural and social institutions. And his followers, instead of saying, no, it has to stop here, they say, oh, yeah, we agree. Trump is the only guy who's willing to tell these truths. We're learning more and more about the concern and panic from Donald Trump about the multiple Russia investigations. And it's not just unhinged tweets laced with bizarre typos, capitalization, parentheses, and quotation marks. It's also related to the revelation from a New York Times report that during this past summer, Donald Trump tried to get multiple Republican senators to end the Senate investigation into possible Trump-Russia collusion. We already knew that Trump asked Comey to lay off of Mike Flynn and to wrap up the Russia investigation ASAP. We now have a report in the New York Times corroborated by 6 or more lawmakers and aides to those lawmakers. Republican Richard Burr is one example. Trump told him, I'm eager to see this investigation end. According to the same New York Times report, a Republican close to Senate Republican Richard Burr spoke on the condition of anonymity, said Trump was, quote, very forceful in trying to get Senator Burr to end the investigation. Trump told Mitch McConnell and Roy Blunt, who are also key Republicans, end this thing quickly. Trump complained to McConnell and Bob Corker that Republicans in the House weren't doing enough to make the Russia story disappear. Another Republican said that Trump contacted them not to end the Russia investigation, but instead to start an investigation into Hillary Clinton. And then another element of this report is that Trump would sometimes call Republican senators when Trump's senior staff wasn't around, which implies he's kind of like a little kid, right? He knew he was doing a bad boy and he didn't want mommy and daddy to see and know about it. I can just imagine Trump sneaking away into the bathroom with his phone, calling these Senate Republicans and saying, hey, can you end this? Oh, Jared Kushner walks in. What are you doing in there, Donald? Do you need help wiping? No, I'm fine. I'm on the phone. It is like a little kid, and it is not about whether this is or isn't unconstitutional or is or isn't obstruction of justice, which it all might be, by the way. It's about whether you believe in separation of powers or you don't. The president should not have, nor should they try to exert influence over the Justice Department, over the judicial branch. The president should not be trying to get investigations into him ended by a branch that's supposed to be a check or balance on his power. That's what this is really about.
I mean, it's crazy to me because I think if big news breaks in this whole Trump-Russia investigation, it probably wouldn't happen in the Senate or the House investigation. It would happen under Robert Mueller's
Absolutely.
probe. So this is just a waste of your political capital in a way.
I believe that the Senate and House investigations have in different ways been discredited, or at least they've been deflated by different things that have happened. It's the Mueller investigation that's really the existential threat to Donald Trump.
Yeah, so you're running so much risk, and then there's really no reward you can get out of this.
Now, the technicality that the defenders of Trump will hang their hats on is that, yes, Trump is attempting to influence the investigations, but it's not undue influence, because, of course, undue influence is totally subjective. Unwarranted or inappropriate because of it being excessive or disproportionate. Whether Trump's influence, wow, and I did something rude. I didn't mute my phone for today's program because I'm so excited by these stories. Whether something is excessive or disproportionate is sort of in the eye of the beholder. He asked 4 senators, which I guess is okay. But if he had asked 7 senators to end the investigation, then it wouldn't have been allowed. Now, to be thorough, to go back to the obstruction thing, this does seem like obstruction of justice. If you look at 18 USC 1505, whoever corruptly or by threats or force or by any threatening letter or communication influences, obstructs, or impedes or endeavors to influence, obstruct, or impede the due and proper administration of the law under which any pending proceeding is being had before any department or agency of the United States, or the due and proper exercise of the power of inquiry under which any inquiry or investigation is being had by either House or any committee of either House or any joint committee of the Congress. It's a mouthful. But what that basically says is that if someone makes any effort to get in the way of a full and unfettered investigation or inquiry by any branch of government, that is obstruction of justice. And it appears as though Donald Trump has obstructed justice, although I don't think that we need to assume that he's going to be charged anytime soon.
Well, probably not. But I mean, now we actually have charges, right? We have indictments, we have guilty pleas. There are actual crimes that he tried to impede, right? To get out of the way of and make people not pay attention to.
That's interesting, which is even though Donald Trump, as of yet, has not been certainly not indicted, and it's unlikely that would happen, but accused of having committed any crime, this was an investigation that led to charges which he tried to impede, which gets us to, if Trump had successfully short-circuited this investigation, there would have been alleged crimes for which indictments were served that never would have been. If that is not the definition of obstruction of justice, I don't know what is. Discuss this with us on our Reddit discussion forum, davidpakman.com/REDDIT.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
It's great to welcome back to the program Alex Mohajer, who's the co-founder of Bros for America, a progressive advocacy organization. He's also a political writer and commentator for the Huffington Post. Well, Alex, we now have indictment number 4 and guilty plea number 2 in this Robert Mueller investigation.
In Flynn we trust.
I'm sorry, what was that?
In Mueller we trust.
In Mueller we trust. Yes. 4 indictments,
yes.
2 guilty pleas. Do you feel vindicated in some way? I mean, do you think we're getting close to the end? Is this only the beginning?
Oh, I mean, I think we're seeing Mueller approaching the end game here. I think you've gone basically as high up as you can get within that campaign, other than the vice president. And I think that the evidence is very clear that if Michael Flynn is guilty, then so is Mike Pence, because Mike Pence knew. And I think that it's almost unfathomable to suggest that the president himself was not aware of all of this going on around him. And there are emails now on point, as you know, as I've seen you report on, that are showing that this campaign was aware of this. This is a active effort to conspire with a foreign hostile power to influence an American election.
Well, that may be.
So,
We may ultimately
yeah.
see charges related to that. But to play devil's advocate, what some on the right have been saying is, yes, there have been indictments, but the indictments don't relate directly to actions taken that actually concerned the Trump campaign and the attempt to become president of the United States. That you're talking about lies about things that took place. You're talking about, in the case of Paul Manafort, financial crimes that predated his involvement in the Trump administration by and large. What about people who point that out?
I don't know that Mueller would have made a deal with Mike Flynn if he weren't aiming right for the top, and if he weren't aiming for the jugular in terms of the elections interference. But we'll see. I mean, you could very well be right. It could just be this sort of tangential issues. But I think that this is a sign that Mueller's going straight for the very head honcho. Otherwise, I don't think he would have cut a deal with Mike Flynn. What about you?
That's been my analysis, which is that if you're pointing out that Michael Flynn was charged with this one thing only, that this is a very early indictment. Watergate took years, and we're basically 8 weeks in, and we have 4 indictments. I can't imagine that the indictment against Flynn would come so early if it weren't a calculated move to use Flynn to go higher. I mean, that's been my reaction.
I agree with you, and I think the Watergate stuff happened in a time where there was no information. We didn't have any transference of information, and now we have the emails, and it's digital, and I think this is going to move much faster now. It's picking up speed at an exponential rate. So I'm looking forward. I think maybe Donald Trump will get indicted by the end of the month.
No, I think I don't know if you're kidding around, but I don't know that Trump will get indicted at all.
You don't think so?
No,
I think he's going to get
if
indicted.
Trump goes down, Alex, I think if Trump goes down, it's going to be through a resignation or impeachment, maybe. I think if he goes down, it's going to be resignation.
Well, impeachment is definitely not going to happen. Not with this. I mean, look what we just saw the Republican Senate do. They just, on Friday night with the tax bill, they are completely out of control, and they're totally not they're not going to impeach this president. So the only chance I think of impeachment is if Democrats are able to take back the House in 2018, which will be another year. And that will be, I think it's doable given the climate, sort of the political climate right now, and especially what happened in Virginia and New Jersey. But I think you're probably right. I think he would sooner resign than to suffer the indignity of a indictment, but we'll see. It's moving pretty quickly, I think. I mean, have you heard the stories now about his son-in-law? His name escapes
Jared
me
Kushner.
for the moment, but this is Jared Kushner, good old Kushner. You know why I don't know his name is I've never heard the guy speak.
Hey, let me ask you this, Alex. What do you make of the contingent of the left that even as of this morning continues to insist that there is no Russia story, that it's a distraction, that it's an attempt to sort of try to prop up Hillary Clinton as having been a better candidate than some believe she was? Where are you on your analysis of the faction of the left that is saying there's no Russia story?
I find it problematic. I find it problematic because, A, if we do not acknowledge interferences with our free and fair elections, the very cornerstone of our American democracy, the most essential part of a democracy is the free and fair elections. If we do not acknowledge that this interference occurred, we are just allowing it to continue, and we're allowing a culture. We're creating a culture. What we allow, we encourage. And we already have signs that Russia is already meddling. I mean, the troll farm is alive and well. I am certain that I deal with Russian trolls daily on Twitter. At Alex Mohajer, if anyone wants to follow me. But there's a lot of evidence to show that it's still going on. So if we don't address this problem, it's going to be a problem that continues, and that's very, very frightening. We can't have a foreign hostile power dictating our elections, and now we have evidence that 126 million Facebook users were subjected to Russian ads. We've got evidence that these Facebook groups were like fake racialized activist groups that were just sort of trying to influence opinion and cause racial discord. This is a massive effort that involved a year or more of many Russian operatives sitting in a Russian bunker at the Kremlin, dropping fake news onto the Facebook pages of people in the essential swing states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And how did they know to drop that information there? Well, it's because they were colluding with the Trump campaign and because they were stealing voter data, as we have evidence now that suggests that much. So,
but Alex, why do you think, what is the
yes.
interest? What's the interest of some on the left in denying the Russia story? Why is it something that they would seek to deny in your mind?
I think that I think the Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton war that we have seen in terms of the supporters, the two factions, it is ongoing. It is continuing today. I was at a Hillary Clinton book signing on Friday, and there were Bernie Sanders supporters there protesting a book signing. I was pretty flabbergasted by that, and I went out and I asked them. I interviewed a few of them just to see what was going on, and I told them, she's not running for anything. She's a former presidential candidate. Right now, there's a tax bill going up before the Senate. Maybe you should direct your attention towards that. I think that they are very hell-bent on having justice for what they view as a 2016 Democratic primary that was stolen from them, which is factually incorrect.
Well, hold on a second.
It's
factually incorrect. I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure where you are on that issue, but I mean, at least from my perspective, the DNC was not even close to a fair arbiter of that primary whatsoever. And I don't, to say stolen, you need sort of to definitively know that for sure Bernie Sanders would have otherwise won. It's very hard to prove something that didn't happen. But for me, the problem is,
of course,
that being said, it doesn't have any bearing on what Russia may or may not have done. That's why I'm concerned.
Of course, you're absolutely right. But I will just point out that Hillary Clinton did win the Democratic primary by 4 million votes, which is a veritable landslide. 4 million votes and 1,000 delegates, which is a vast landslide in Democratic primaries. In terms of the general election, she won that race by 3 million votes and then lost in the Electoral College. So it is apples and oranges.
Okay, but hold on a second. Let's see if we can break this apart a little bit. Yes.
All right.
The numbers you cited are all correct. I don't know what the general election results have to do with the primary, but I'm sure that you as a political analyst know that in a primary, the final numbers don't reflect the paths that could have been taken, because once it becomes clear that one candidate is going to be the winner, supporters just fall off of whoever candidate number 2 is. I don't know that looking at the final numbers tells us that early on, had the DNC not already been clearly decided that they were supporting Hillary Clinton, that it wouldn't have been different from the start. I don't think that we can really say that.
Well, I agree with you and disagree, but of course this debate is exactly why it answers your question. I think that this debate is what is still rankling many of the supporters who are upset about the primary of 2016, and I think it's causing some discord.
Yeah, but to be clear, it's not rankling me, right? I mean, I'm telling you, I don't agree with you, but I don't agree with you on the primary analysis, but I'm completely on board with you about the problem with saying, hey, Russia doesn't exist.
Of course. I view you as one of the with it ones, but I think when you talk about that faction of the left that is not upset about Russia, I think that's probably motivated by a sort of a willful apathy or a willful sort of ignorance, because they don't want to have to concede that she won. No one wants to concede that Hillary Clinton won the 2016 election. And I understand why. It is a very troubling thing. It's a thing of conspiracy theorists and crackpots. But it's troubling, and it's hard for us as a society to accept things that are outside of our sort of normal day-to-day flow. It disrupts what we understand. So hopefully we get some answers, some final answers about this. But yeah, I think that anything to keep a victory for Hillary Clinton out of the lips of people is what's motivating some.
Real quick, Alex, in the limited time we have left, what was the beef you had with Tucker Carlson when you first were on, and did you want to have is there any follow-up to that you wanted to send a message to him or anything?
Tucker Carlson suggested that I was a crackpot for merely stating that the Department of Justice was investigating the Russian interference with the election. And all I've got to say is, where's my gift basket, Tucker? I want an apology, and I want it now.
All right. Alex Mohajer, co-founder of Bros for America. You can follow his writing on the Huffington Post. Alex, thank you. We're going to continue following the investigation as we have been.
You're doing great work, David.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
A major allegation was made by MSNBC host Joe Scarborough, and it relates to something that we've been talking about for a long time on the program. That topic is Donald Trump and cognitive decline or possible dementia, very erratic behavior. We've been talking about it for months. And Joe Scarborough said late last week on his program that people close to Donald Trump during the presidential campaign told him that Donald Trump is in the early stages of dementia. I'm going to play the clip for you. Lovebirds Joe Scarborough and Mika Brzezinski here talking about it. I'm going to play a clip of about a minute and a half for you to give you the context and the lead up to it, and then Joe Scarborough's claim about Donald Trump and dementia.
And yet, he's completely detached from reality. We had a New York Times and Washington Post piece saying so a couple of days ago. And the question is, Mika, if this is not what the 25th Amendment was drafted for,
then what is it?
I would like the cabinet members serving America, not the president, serving America.
America.
You serve America, and you know it. You know you don't serve Donald J. Trump. Scam developer. Scam, Trump University proprietor, reality TV show host. You don't represent him. You represent 320 million people whose lives are literally in your hands, and we are facing a showdown with a nuclear power, and you have somebody inside the White House that the New York Daily News says is mentally unfit, that people close to him say is mentally unfit, that people close to him during the campaign told me had early stages of dementia. Now, listen, you can get mad at me if you want to.
You can say that's not okay to say, but
it is okay to say. When are we supposed to say this? After the first nuclear missile goes?
It's very easy to write this off as Joe and Mika are in a feud with Trump. Trump said Mika was bleeding very badly from a facelift, right? The entire thing. And that they'll say anything that they can think of to get under Trump's skin. And that may well be, but they're not just saying anything, right? They're saying something that we and mental health experts, including psychiatrists, have been saying for a while. Mika and Joe aren't saying Trump has a brain aneurysm, which is not something anybody else is saying. They're saying the exact same thing that we've been talking about. And I got one email from a viewer saying, David, Joe is citing sources close to Trump. You don't need to be close to Trump to realize that Trump is in the early stages of dementia. But I think it's important to say that we shouldn't allow this to excuse the Russia stuff, because I got emails from a bunch of viewers saying, David, look at the timing. Another indictment, Michael Flynn, and more stories about Trump being cognitively compromised. Is this laying the groundwork for an eventual defense by Donald Trump that he was cognitively compromised and can't be held liable for anything that he's done? And it's sort of conspiratorial. There's no doubt there's a possible Republican strategy in there, right? If there's something to this dementia claim and Trump's symptoms progress and Trump quits or is removed for medical reasons, the Trump-Russia investigation probably evaporates, at least with regard to Mike Pence and Donald Trump. Pence becomes president, and everyone gets away with it except for whoever will have been indicted by then. So far, we have 4 people who have been indicted. I want to make one more comment. I'm not talking as a medical expert, just as someone who's been around dementia in a number of people. Trump's behavior possibly does fit the bill, right? I mean, the leaving of events where he's there to sign a bill or an executive order without having signed it, right? He just leaves without having signed it. Not realizing that his limousine is right in front of him when he gets off of a plane and starts to wander off and has to be redirected back to his car. when he didn't realize that Rudy Giuliani was sitting right in front of him or that Melania Trump was standing right next to him. It's concerning behavior. It doesn't mean, though, Pat, that Trump is any more or less qualified to be president. I think he's totally unqualified anyway.
I can't remember now. Was this before or after Trump accused Joe Scarborough of being a murderer?
That I don't know. Yeah, but what? And do you even know what that's about?
I guess in like 2001, when Joe Scarborough was a congressman, there was a staffer who fell, maybe had a heart condition, hit her head, and passed away.
Yeah.
And ever since, there's been this conspiracy theory that Trump has now resurfaced that Scarborough killed her. And coroners have proven otherwise. But Trump is still on this idea.
I wonder if this clip was from right after that or if that was Trump's reaction to this clip.
But would Trump be watching Morning Joe? I mean, Fox and Friends is on at the same time.
24/7 Fox and Friends on repeat. Yeah, so it's hard to know when he'd have time to watch Morning Joe. Anyway, so listen, yet someone else who says that people told him Trump is in the early stages of dementia. Here's a stunning story that a lot of people in the U.S. didn't know about. NPR did cover this. But by and large, it did not really get a ton of attention. A war criminal committed suicide on camera at The Hague. Bosnian war criminal Slobodan Praljak, I believe is the name, the way his last name is pronounced. He had been sentenced previously to 20 years in prison for ordering a 16th century bridge to be destroyed back in 1993 during the separation of Yugoslavia, and he appealed to the United Nations. And the United Nations actually did overturn some of his convictions, although they didn't reduce his 20-year prison sentence at all. And, of course, as a very general overview, the Bosnian War was a major theater of violence in the 90s. About 100,000 people died. Millions of people were displaced. It was mostly Bosnian Muslims fighting against Bosnian Serbs, but there were also Bosnian Croats who were fighting against Bosnian Muslims. It was a really horrible situation. Now, I'm going to show you video of this man committing suicide, but it's not violent at all. It's not graphic in any way, because what Slobodan Praljak did is drink poison at The Hague. And if anything is stunning about the video, it's actually kind of how calm everybody remains. And I realize it's not great for people listening since it's very visual. You're going to hear some audio, and then you will hear Slobodan Praljak say, before drinking the poison, that he is not a war criminal and that he rejects the verdict. And then he takes a shot of some liquid, which we later found out was potassium cyanide. Take a look at this. Take a listen.
Praljak, you may be seated. Stop, please. Please sit down.
Yeah.
I have taken poison.
Monsieur le Président, il vient. Notre client dit qu'il a bu un poison ce matin.
Okay, we suspend, please, the curtains.
Bizarre, right? He did indeed commit suicide. He drank potassium cyanide. The hearing was suspended. He was transported to a hospital nearby, and he died. And now the courtroom itself is a crime scene, and an investigation is going to be taking place over what took place in the courtroom. Incredible story. And I don't know why it didn't get more attention. Like I said, NPR did a bunch of reporting on it. So did the BBC. Mostly the coverage was international, and I don't know. I mean, maybe it's because we were dealing with a whole bunch of Trump tweets combined with an abortive tax bill or whatever, but this is just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, and it's so, I mean, it's not graphic in the sense that it's not like it's bloody or violent or
anything,
it's
not gory.
Yeah, but you'd think this would be something that the media would cover, right?
I know, it was sort of weird, and I talked to a lot of people, even people who listen to NPR every day, and they didn't even hear about this. And it's always interesting to think about what does and doesn't make news, and we could think about why it didn't make news in the United States. And related, by the way, to our death penalty discussion, I have said for a long time, I believe life in prison is worse than death. And to some degree, Slobodan Praljak must have felt that 20 years in prison was worse than death
Yeah.
For him, anyway.
I mean, I was doing the math, and I think he could have gotten out of prison when he was in his mid to late 80s. Now, who knows if he would have lived that long.
Yeah.
But maybe he did this to maybe be like a martyr,
Yeah.
or because he just couldn't deal with the shame that was involved.
I don't know if it was as much because of the calculation that 20 years in prison was worse than death, but there did seem to be a political sort of protest element to it, which might have influenced what he did. I'm out of time. We had a great voicemail to play, but I'll play it for you tomorrow. We've got a fantastic bonus show. Sign up, davidpakman.com/membership, patreon.com/David Pakman Show. And remember that 2018 David Pakman Show calendars are now available. You can get them for free with a new yearly membership. Find out more at davidpakman.com/calendar18.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.